What if a single evening could rewrite your entire life? Imagine being asked to pretend you're someone you're not, only to discover a truth about yourself that's more shocking than any lie you could ever tell. This is a story about desperation, deception, and a fateful encounter where a simple favor for a boss spirals into a life-altering revelation. It's a reminder that sometimes the past doesn't just haunt us, it hunts us down when we least expect it. Get ready for a story that will keep you on the edge of your seat until the very last second. Ava was running on fumes and desperation. A student at the University of Pittsburgh by day, she spent her nights poring over textbooks, dreaming of a life beyond the crushing weight of her mother's medical bills. Her mom, Linda, a career waitress, was now barely able to walk due to a severe neuropathy that insurance barely touched. The only job Ava could find that fit her chaotic schedule was a janitorial position at Keystone Innovations, a struggling manufacturing firm in an old industrial park by the Allegheny River. The company was on its last legs until Ethan Cole, a young, ambitious entrepreneur, bought it for a steal. He saw potential where others saw rust and decay, and he was pouring his soul into turning the sinking ship around. Ava just needed the job. She had no idea her new boss was about to change not only her financial situation, but the very fabric of her identity. "Hello, I'm here for the interview." Ava's voice was a small, hopeful tremor in the sterile silence of the HR office. Victoria Vance, the head of human resources, looked up from her monitor, her perfectly sculpted eyebrows arching in disdain. She scanned Ava's simple jeans and worn-out blazer, a stark contrast to her own sharp designer suit. "Right. Have a seat," she said, her tone as cold as the polished steel of her desk. The leather chair felt alien and unwelcoming as Ava sat, clutching her resume. "So," Victoria began, leaning back with a theatrical sigh, "explain to me what value add a part-time student with zero corporate experience brings to Keystone Innovations." Ava's prepared speech evaporated. "I'm a hard worker, I'm reliable, and I learn fast." The words felt flimsy, pathetic. "We're not looking for hard workers. We're looking for synergy." "For people who understand the new corporate landscape," Victoria countered, her voice dripping with condescension. "Frankly, I don't see it." Each word was a calculated jab, designed to make Ava feel small and utterly unqualified. Just as Ava's hope was about to crumble, the office door swung open. A young man in a tailored suit, his sleeves casually rolled up, strode in with an air of focused energy. He had a warm, disarming smile that seemed completely out of place in Victoria's icy domain. "Victoria, do you have the quarterly projections?" he asked, his eyes briefly landing on a terrified Ava. "Mr. Cole, I'm in the middle of an interview," Victoria snapped, clearly annoyed by the interruption. "This applicant is unsuitable." The man, Ethan Cole, the new owner, paused. He looked from Victoria's smug expression to Ava's downcast face. "Unsuitable for what? The janitorial position?" he asked, his tone even. "We're short-staffed, and the place is a mess. Are you willing to work hard?" he asked, looking directly at Ava. She nodded, speechless. "Great. You're hired. Victoria, draw up the paperwork. She starts tomorrow." He gave Ava a quick, reassuring wink before grabbing a folder and exiting, leaving a stunned Ava and a fuming Victoria in his wake. The first few weeks were a blur of fluorescent lights and the scent of industrial cleaner. The work was grueling, but Ava was grateful for it. The office staff, however, treated her like she was invisible, a ghost who only appeared after hours to empty their trash. A cocky sales manager named Kyle seemed to take special pleasure in making her life difficult. "Hey, Sparkles! You missed a spot," he'd call out just as she was finishing a floor. One evening, as she pushed her cart past the sales bullpen, Kyle held up his half-full latte cup. "Oh, whoops," he said with a smirk, deliberately tipping it over. The creamy, sugary liquid spread across the freshly mopped tile. His colleagues snickered. Ava felt a hot flash of anger, but she swallowed it down. She couldn't afford to lose this job. Without a word, she turned her cart around, grabbed the mop, and began cleaning up his mess, her jaw tight with resentment. The final straw came on a rainy Tuesday. Ava was packing up, ready to head home for a few precious hours of studying, when Frank, the stoic head of security, blocked her path. He was a mountain of a man, an ex-cop with eyes that missed nothing. "Hold up, Ava. Need to check your bag," he said, his voice a low rumble. Ava's heart hammered against her ribs. "What? Why?" Frank's expression was unreadable. Anonymous tip. Routine check. With trembling hands, she handed over her backpack. Frank unzipped the main compartment and pulled out a small, sleek USB drive. "Can you explain this?" he asked, holding it up. It was branded with the Keystone Innovations logo. I've never seen that before in my life," Ava stammered, her mind racing. "It's not mine, I swear." Frank's face remained a stony mask. "That's what they all say. Mr. Cole wants to see you. Now." The walk to the CEO's office felt like a mile-long march to her own execution. Ethan Cole's office was a stark contrast to the rest of the building. It was modern, with a huge window overlooking the glittering lights of the city, but Ava couldn't appreciate the view. She stood before his desk, feeling like a criminal. The USB drive lay between them like a grenade with the pin pulled. "Frank says he found this in your bag," Ethan said, his voice losing its usual warmth. "It contains our entire Q4 financial strategy and a confidential client list. This could ruin us." Tears welled in Ava's eyes. "Mr. Cole, I swear on my mother's life, I did not steal that. I don't even know how it got in my bag." Her voice broke a raw mix of fear and desperation. Ethan studied her face, his gaze intense. He saw the genuine terror in her eyes, the way her whole body trembled. His business mind screamed that she was a liability, a corporate spy. But his gut, the same intuition that led him to buy this company, told him something else. It told him she was telling the truth. "Stay here," Ethan said to Ava, his tone decisive. He turned to Frank. "Let's go to your office. I want to see the security footage from the main floor hallway for the last 3 hours." In the cramped security office, they watched the grainy footage. They fast-forwarded through the mundane coming and going of employees. Then, Ethan leaned forward. "Stop. Go back 10 seconds. On the screen, they saw Ava hang her coat and backpack on the public coat rack before heading to the supply closet. A few minutes later, another figure entered the frame. It was Victoria Vance. She glanced around nervously, then walked directly to Ava's backpack. She deftly unzipped a pocket, slipped something inside, and walked away, a triumphant smirk on her face. "Well, I'll be damned," Frank muttered. Ethan felt a cold fury rise within him. It wasn't just theft. It was a cruel, calculated attempt to destroy an innocent person's life for the sake of petty revenge. The next morning, Ethan called an all-hands meeting in the main conference room. The air was thick with tension and curiosity. Ava stood awkwardly in the back, her stomach in knots. Ethan stood at the head of the table, his expression grim. Yesterday, a serious security breach occurred. Confidential data was stolen, and an attempt was made to frame an innocent employee. He paused, letting his words hang in the air. He then turned to Victoria, who looked on with a feigned expression of concern. "Victoria, could you explain why you were seen on camera placing a company USB drive into Ava's personal bag?" The colour drained from Victoria's face. The room erupted in shocked whispers. That's a lie. The footage must be doctored," she stammered. Ethan simply tapped his laptop, and the security video played on the large screen for everyone to see. The silence was deafening. "Pack your things." "You're fired," Ethan said, his voice low and final. Victoria shot Ava a look of pure hatred before storming out of the room. Later that day, Ava timidly knocked on Ethan's open office door. I wanted to thank you," she said softly, "for believing me." Ethan looked up from a complicated spreadsheet, his face etched with exhaustion. "You didn't deserve that. No one does." He gestured for her to come in. As she stepped closer, her eyes fell on the screen. "I'm sorry to bother you, but Your formula in cell G52 is off, she said, almost involuntarily. You're carrying the decimal from the wrong column. It's throwing off your entire projection. Ethan stared at the screen, then back at her, his mouth slightly agape. He reran the numbers with her correction. The results shifted dramatically for the better. How did you? He started, genuinely stunned. I'm a business major, she said with a small shrug. I see numbers like that all day. For the first time, he wasn't just seeing the janitor. He was seeing a sharp, intelligent woman hiding in plain sight. That moment broke the ice between them. Ethan started seeking her out, not as a boss to an employee, but as a friend. They talked late into the evening after the office had cleared out. She told him about her dream of finishing her degree and her constant worry for her mother, Linda, whose medical treatments were a black hole for her meagre paycheck. The story of her mother's strength and resilience in the face of constant pain touched him deeply. He found himself opening up in return, sharing his own anxieties. He spoke of the immense pressure he was under, the sleepless nights spent trying to save the company, and the lonely burden of having everyone's livelihood resting on his shoulders. In those quiet, late-night conversations, surrounded by the hum of dormant computers, they discovered a profound and unexpected connection. Two people from different worlds, finding common ground in their shared struggles. Their easy friendship felt like a lifeline to Ava. Ethan was the first person in a long time who saw her for who she was, not just what she did for a living. One evening, as she was wiping down his desk, he told her about his biggest gamble yet, a potential partnership with a group of powerful New York investors led by a titan of industry named Michael Gray. If this deal goes through, Ava, it changes everything, he said, his eyes shining with a mix of excitement and terror. We'll be saved! He spoke of his plans with such passion that Ava felt a flutter in her chest. It was more than just admiration. It was a deeper, more complicated feeling she didn't dare name. He was her boss, a man from a world impossibly distant from her own. Yet in that moment, she felt an undeniable pull toward him, a magnetic force that was both thrilling and terrifying. The next day, that fragile hope shattered. As Ava passed Ethan's office, she heard his voice, softer and more intimate than she'd ever heard it before. I know, baby. I miss you too. I'll see you this weekend. A wave of cold disappointment washed over her. Of course, he had someone. A man like Ethan Cole wouldn't be single. She quickly moved on before he could see her, her heart feeling ridiculously heavy. Later, while refilling the coffee machine, she ran into Natalie, the office's resident gossip queen. Can you believe it? Natalie whispered conspiratorially. The big boss is finally bringing his fiancée, Veronica, to town for the big investor dinner. She's old money from the East Coast. They're practically a power couple. The words hit Ava like a punch to the gut. Fiancée. The casual, crushing finality of the word extinguished the tiny secret spark of hope she had been nursing in her heart. After that, Ava carefully rebuilt the professional wall between them. She kept her conversations with Ethan brief and polite, avoiding the late-night talks that had become the highlight of her week. Ethan seemed confused and a little hurt by her sudden distance, but he was too consumed by the upcoming investor meeting to press the issue. Ava threw herself into her work and studies, with a vengeance, trying to bury her disappointment under a mountain of tasks. She told herself it was for the best. A relationship between them was a fantasy, a daydream to get her through long nights of mopping floors. She was the janitor, and he was the CEO engaged to a socialite. That was the reality, and the sooner she accepted it, the less it would hurt. But every time she saw him, a painful ache reminded her of the connection she had so foolishly allowed herself to feel. A month later, everything changed. Ava walked into Ethan's office to find him staring blankly out the window, his posture slumped in defeat. He looked utterly broken. "Mr. Cole, are you okay?" she asked hesitantly. He turned, and she was shocked to see the raw pain in his eyes. "It's over, Ava," he said, his voice hoarse. "I went to see Veronica this weekend. I walked in on her with my best friend." The confession hung in the air, heavy and ugly. Ava's heart went out to him. her own foolish crush forgotten in the face of his very real agony. "I'm so sorry, Ethan," she whispered, using his first name without thinking. He sank into his chair, burying his face in his hands. "The worst part," he mumbled, "is that I was supposed to bring her to the investor dinner next week. I told Michael Gray all about my wonderful, supportive fiancé. Now what do I do?" He looked up at her, a wild, desperate idea dawning in his eyes. "This is the most important meeting of my life. These investors, especially Michael Gray, are old school. They value stability, family. If I show up alone after bragging about my fiancé, I'll look like a fool, someone who can't even manage his own life, let alone a multi-million-dollar investment." He was pacing now, his energy frantic. "It's not just about looking stupid. It's about trust. They'll see me as unstable, unreliable. The whole deal could fall apart because of this." He stopped directly in front of her, his gaze intense. "This is going to sound crazy," he said, taking a deep breath, "but I need you to do something for me. I need you to come to the dinner and pretend to be my fiancé." The request was so absurd, so outlandish, that Ava could only stare at him in stunned silence. "Absolutely not," Ava said, her voice barely a whisper. "I can't. I'm the janitor, Ethan. What if someone recognizes me? What would I even wear? What would I say?" Panic began to set in. "No one will know you," he pleaded, his voice laced with desperation. "These guys are from New York. They've never set foot in this building. As for the rest, I'll take care of everything. A dress, shoes, anything you need. Please, Ava. You're the only person I trust. You would be saving not just me, but this entire company. Everyone's job is on the line." He looked at her, his usual confidence stripped away, leaving only raw vulnerability. He was right. It wasn't just about him. It was about the hundreds of employees whose futures depended on this deal. Against her better judgment, against every rational thought in her head, she heard herself say the one word she knew she might regret. "Okay." The next 2 days were a whirlwind. Ethan gave her a company credit card and a simple instruction: "Buy whatever you need." They went to a high-end boutique downtown, a place Ava had only ever walked past, never dreaming of entering. Trying on elegant silk and satin dresses felt like playing dress-up in someone else's life. With Ethan's guidance, she chose a stunning, deep sapphire gown that made her feel like a different person. He insisted on getting her everything: delicate silver heels, a small clutch, and even arranged for a hair and makeup artist to come to her apartment. As she looked at her reflection on the night of the dinner, she barely recognized the woman staring back. The tired student was gone, replaced by a sophisticated, elegant stranger. It was a beautiful illusion, but underneath it all, her heart was pounding with a terrifying mix of excitement and dread. The restaurant was on Mount Washington, offering a breathtaking panoramic view of the Pittsburgh skyline. It was the kind of place where the wine list was thicker than her textbooks. As they were seated, Ava was introduced to the other investors and their impeccably dressed wives. They were polite but distant, their small talk revolving around summer homes in the Hamptons and European ski trips. Ava felt like an imposter, a fraud waiting to be exposed. She clutched her wine glass, focusing on Ethan's coaching. Smile, nod, and let him do most of the talking. He was brilliant, effortlessly charming as he navigated the conversation, and he kept a reassuring hand on her lower back, a silent anchor in a sea of overwhelming luxury. Despite her anxiety, a part of her felt a thrill, a taste of a life she could never have imagined. "Sorry I'm late, gentlemen." The traffic from the airport was a nightmare. A new voice, rich and commanding, cut through the restaurant's quiet hum. A man in his late 50s, radiating an aura of immense power and charisma, approached their table. He was impeccably dressed in a tailored suit, his silver hair perfectly coiffed. This had to be Michael Gray. He shook hands around the table, his smile warm and genuine. "Ethan, my boy, it's good to see you in person," he said, his voice booming with confidence. "And this must be the lovely fiancée you've told me so much about." He turned to Ava, his smile widening, and then he froze. The smile vanished from his face, replaced by an expression of pure, unadulterated shock. The colour drained from his cheeks and he took a half step back, his hand flying to his chest as if he'd been struck. "Angela!" The name was a choked whisper. Michael Gray stared at Ava, his eyes wide with a mixture of disbelief and a deep, haunting sorrow. The entire table fell silent, the clinking of cutlery and quiet chatter ceasing completely. My name is Ava," she said, her voice trembling. Ethan quickly stood up, placing a steadying hand on Michael's arm. "Michael, are you all right? This is Ava, my fiancée." Michael seemed to snap out of his trance, but his eyes never left Ava's face. "Forgive me," he said, his voice strained. You are the spitting image of my daughter, my late daughter Angela." He sank into the nearest chair, looking pale and shaken. The atmosphere at the table had irrevocably shifted from a business dinner to a wake. The resemblance was so uncanny, so perfect, that it had momentarily resurrected a ghost right before his very eyes. The rest of the dinner was excruciatingly awkward. The business talk was abandoned, replaced by a heavy, sombre silence. Michael couldn't stop looking at Ava. He wasn't just glancing, he was studying her, memorizing every feature, every gesture, as if trying to reconcile the impossible. He asked her questions, where she was from, where she grew up, his voice filled with a strange urgency. Ava answered as best she could, her heart pounding. She felt Ethan's hand tighten on hers under the table, a silent message of support. To everyone else, she was just a girl who looked like someone they'd lost. But to Michael, it was clear she was something more, a puzzle he was desperately trying to solve. The night was no longer about a business deal. It was about a man seeing a phantom and refusing to believe it was a coincidence. Before they left, Michael pulled Ethan and Ava aside. "I know this sounds insane," he said, his voice low and intense, "but this is more than a resemblance. There are things, a small mole beneath her right eye, the way her smile quirks up on one side. It's exactly like Angela." He looked directly at Ava, his eyes pleading. "I need to know for sure. I want to ask you to take a DNA test. I'll cover all expenses, of course. I have to know." Before Ava could even process the request, he pulled a platinum credit card from his wallet and pressed it into her hand. "This is for you, for your trouble, for everything. Please just consider it." The request was surreal, the gesture even more so. Ava looked at Ethan, who seemed just as stunned as she was. This night of pretending had spiraled into a bizarre reality she couldn't comprehend. The week spent waiting for the DNA results was the longest of Ava's life. Michael Gray had returned to New York, but he called her every single day, his voice a mix of hope and anxiety. True to his word, he had a concierge medical service come to her apartment to collect a sample, a quiet and surreal invasion of her ordinary life. During that week, the pretense between Ava and Ethan melted away, replaced by a shared sense of bewilderment. They were partners in this strange new reality. He took her to dinner, to a real movie, not as a fake fiancé, but as a friend. She found herself falling for him all over again, not for the powerful CEO, but for the kind, vulnerable man who held her hand and told her, "Whatever happens, we'll figure it out together." The line between their fake relationship and their real feelings was becoming impossibly blurred. The email with the results arrived on a Friday afternoon. Ava's hand shook as she opened the attached PDF. She, Ethan, and Michael were all on a conference call, the silence crackling with anticipation. Ava's eyes scanned the technical jargon until they landed on the final, devastating sentence. "Conclusion. The analysis does not support the conclusion of a father-daughter biological relationship." The words were clinical, final. "No." Michael's voice on the phone was filled with anguish. "That can't be right. There must be a mistake." Ava felt a surprising pang of disappointment. A part of her, a foolish, secret part, had started to hope. "They must have mixed up the samples," Michael insisted, his voice frantic. "I'm ordering another test from a different lab. This isn't over." The call ended, leaving Ava and Ethan in a state of shared confusion an anticlimax. As they sat in stunned silence, an idea occurred to Ethan. "Ava, there's one other person we could ask," he said gently. "Your mother. She might know something about your father's side of the family. Maybe there's a relative you don't know about." Ava's stomach twisted into a knot. Her mother, Linda, was finally starting to feel a bit better. The last thing Ava wanted was to upset her with this bizarre story and a barrage of questions about a past Linda never spoke of. "I can't, Ethan. It would worry her too much. She's so fragile right now." "I know," he said, taking her hand. "But Michael isn't going to let this go. And don't you want to know? Don't you want to understand why you have a mirror image of yourself out there in the world? This might be our only way to find the truth." He was right. Her own curiosity was a burning, undeniable force. With a heavy heart, she agreed. That evening, Ava sat with her mother in their small, cosy living room. She carefully explained the events of the past week, watching Linda's face grow pale. When she finished, Linda was silent for a long time, her gaze fixed on a worn spot on the carpet. Finally, she looked at Ava, her eyes glistening with tears. "Honey, there's something I should have told you a long time ago," she began, her voice thick with emotion. "The reason I never talked about your father is, I don't know who he is. You're not my biological daughter, Ava. I adopted you." The world seemed to tilt on its axis. Linda explained that she had found Ava at a local children's home, a newborn baby left on their doorstep, with no note, no name, no history. She had fallen in love instantly and adopted her, raising her as her own beloved child. Ava wasn't just an adopted daughter. She was a foundling, a complete mystery. Ava immediately called Ethan and Michael to tell them the news. She was still reeling from the revelation, her entire life story rewritten in a single conversation. On the other end of the line, Michael was quiet for a moment before his voice came back, sharp and focused. "A foundling? Left at a children's home. Ava, what year were you born?" she told him. A sharp intake of breath on Michael's end. "My wife, Diana. She told me she had a late-term miscarriage that year. She went away to a wellness retreat to recover. In Pittsburgh." The pieces were slotting together into a picture that was both horrifying and miraculous. "I need to go home," Michael said, his voice dangerously calm. "I need to talk to my wife. I'm getting on the next flight to New York." The line went dead, leaving an unspoken, earth-shattering accusation hanging in the air. Michael confronted his wife Diana in their palatial New York apartment. Under his intense, unwavering gaze, her carefully constructed facade crumbled. The truth came out in a torrent of sobs and decades-old shame. Before she met Michael, she had a brief, regrettable affair. She discovered she was pregnant after they were already together. And then, at the first ultrasound, she learned it was twins. Terrified that Michael, whose business was just starting, couldn't handle 2 children, and deeply ashamed that they weren't his, she made a desperate choice. She faked a miscarriage, checked into a private clinic in Pittsburgh under a false name, and gave birth to 2 healthy girls. She kept one, Angela, and secretly left the other, Ava, at an orphanage, vowing to never speak of it again, burying the secret under a lifetime of lies. The betrayal was a knife in Michael's heart. The woman he had loved for decades had deceived him in the most profound way possible. But cutting through his rage and pain was an overwhelming, miraculous thought. He had another daughter. She was alive. Fate, in its impossibly cruel and mysterious way, had brought her back to him. He was furious with Diana, their marriage shattered beyond repair. But he was also consumed by a singular purpose, to find Ava and finally be the father he never knew he was. He returned to Pittsburgh not as an investor, but as a man, given a second chance he never thought he'd get. He sat with Ava and Ethan, and with tears in his eyes, told them the whole, unbelievable story. He wasn't her father by DNA, but Angela was her twin sister, and he was the only family she had left. In the months that followed, life transformed. Michael Gray's investment saved Keystone Innovations, turning it into a thriving enterprise. His first official act as a board member was to insist, Ethan created a new position for Ava as a business operations analyst. She quit her janitorial job and excelled in her new role, her sharp mind finally put to good use. Michael became a permanent fixture in her life, a doting, slightly overbearing father making up for lost time. He paid for Linda's surgery and sent her on a luxury recovery retreat. And through it all, Ava and Ethan's connection deepened into a quiet, powerful love. The pretense was long gone, replaced by a genuine partnership built on trust, respect, and the shared memory of the most surreal week of their lives. They were a strange, cobbled-together family, forged in secrets and second chances. One evening, standing on the same Mount Washington overlook where their bizarre journey began, Ethan turned to Ava. The city lights sparkled below them like a carpet of fallen stars. "I never could have done any of this without you," he said softly. "You didn't just save my company. You saved me." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small box. Inside was a simple, elegant diamond ring. "Ava, I know our story started with a lie, but my feelings for you are the most real thing in my life. Will you marry me?" Tears of joy streamed down Ava's face as she nodded, her voice lost in a happy sob. It was a fairy tale ending to a story that had started in a bucket and mop. From a desperate janitor to a beloved daughter and future bride, she had found not just love, but the one thing she never even knew she was searching for, a place to belong. In the end, a desperate request born from a lie led to the discovery of a staggering truth. Ava didn't just get a new dress and a glimpse into another world, she found a lost family, a true love, and her own hidden potential. Ethan didn't just save his company, he found a partner in every sense of the word. And Michael, in his grief, was given the impossible gift of a second chance at fatherhood. Their story proves that life's most incredible chapters are often written by the most unexpected twists of fate. Thank you so much for joining us on this incredible journey. If this story touched your heart, please show your support by hitting that like button, subscribing to the channel, and sharing your thoughts in the comments below. We love hearing from you. And now I have to ask, do you believe in fate, or do you think we make our own luck?